Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Having my coffee this morning. Thought I'd share with you guys my favorite work of prepper fiction. Now, prepper fiction has become huge, and books like 1 Second After have even become the reason why some people have gotten into preparedness. And my personal favorite work of prepper fiction and survival fiction is actually very, very old. And nowadays it wouldn't be considered politically correct. But my favorite work of prepper fiction is Robinson Crusoe. And I have several copies of Robinson Crusoe. And this particular copy here was the first copy I ever had. And I bought it at a used bookstore for, I believe, 10 cents when I was about 10 years old. And every so often, every year and a half or so, I'll pull this guy out and I'll read it, because there's just so many good examples in this book of survival and preparedness, and how this particular individual dealt with his situation that he found himself in. Now, Robinson Crusoe is set in the 1600s, I believe, if I remember correctly, and the book actually takes place in the Caribbean. But the story that this is loosely based on is a gentleman that was a castaway actually in the Pacific. And there's going to be spoilers in this video here, so if you've never read Robinson Crusoe, you might want to shut it off right now and go read it, and then come back and listen to the rest of my review. Plus, the book is so old, there's a lot of really good audio books on like YouTube and stuff where you can just listen to Robinson Crusoe. So if you've never bought a copy of it or read it for yourself, you can listen to it when you're driving to work or whatever. But it covers a lot of things that if there was a true survival situation, you might be faced with. He made bad decisions. That's why he ended up shipwrecked in the first place. He didn't listen to the advice of his elders, so to speak, and he went out and got himself into nothing but trouble. But then he had successes too. But the main bit of the story is he's shipwrecked on a Caribbean island, and he's the lone survivor. And he looks at his situation and realizes he's in a bad situation, and he goes to work immediately to try to make his situation better, to improve his situation. And the first thing he does is he scavenges and salvages everything off the shipwreck that he can possibly salvage, even stuff that he doesn't know what he's going to use at that particular, I don't know, he didn't know what he was going to use with this or that, but he takes everything that he possibly can, because he doesn't know what he's going to need in the future and how long his situation is going to last. And some of those things that he took at that point literally become useful years later. And another thing that he gets into is he explores his environment. Once he gets the ship salvaged and he gets on his island, he finds his fresh water. He makes his camp beside, a little creek or a little stream where he's got his fresh water, and he actually builds his camp from there. And he went and explored his environment. Every day, it says in the book, every day he would go out with his gun and he would explore and see what he could find, what he could find for food, what resources were available, things that if there was an SHTF situation, you might have to do right where you're at right now. But he covers things like he didn't have any, he kept really good records of time. He kept track of time, when it was good to plant, when it was not good to plant, and he kept track of his days and his seasons. Another thing, if there was some massive event, you would have to figure out some way to keep track of time. We have devices that do that now. How many people nowadays keep track of time by the days and the seasons? That would be something in a long-term situation people might have to resort to. Another thing is he cultivated and grew his what he called corn in the book, but it was actually probably a type of barley, or what we would maybe call today einkorn, but it was actually chicken feed that was on the ship, and he threw some of it out that rodents got into, didn't think anything of it, but it actually grew, put up a couple of heads, and he realized this he had actually some seed that he didn't even know that he had, and he harvested that seed and cultivated it over several seasons until he had enough of it where he could grow enough for him to eat plus seed for the next season, and how he would seed enough for the following season. In the Caribbean, it was the wet and the dry season, but you could see how that would be even in the more temperate zones, like where we have seasons up here in the north, where that would be important to have enough to carry you through the winter for the next year. And he had firearms and he had shot and powder, but he knew it was a limited resource. He was stranded on an island. He wouldn't be able to replenish that. So eventually he started thinking about, how can I domesticate the wild animals that are on this island, which were goats. And it got into how he captured those and how he basically became a farmer in this stranded situation, and how he had some tools, but he was in lack of other things. So he had to make those things like pottery, where he could store his food in and cook and boil water and stuff in and make broth and whatever. Those things, he didn't have those things, so he had to make those out of the environment where he was at. Another thing that he lacked was a spade. He didn't have any shovel, and he had to make one out of wood. And another thing, as time went on, he didn't have, his clothes started to wear out, so he had to make clothes from the skins of the animals that he killed, that he harvested. And it got into where he explored areas of the island, and he found what he called raisins in the book, but he dried his own fruit because of the heat of the island that he was on. He was able to dry the fruit, but the fruit was only ready a certain time of year, so he had to have that time aspect when to go out and look for this to dry this fruit and put this stuff up. But it's a really, really, when you start analyzing it and you start looking at how could I, bring this back here to, the modern era, what would be relevant to me if there was a massive SHTF situation, Robinson Crusoe, the book, covers that. It also covers, he was constantly worried about his security because he didn't know where he was at. So he made a fortification. He fortified his camp over the course of years, and he thought up, well, how does one person defend all this? And he had a defense plan in place. He had all these things, and one thing grew upon another. And I think it's a really good example of what a SHTF situation would look like. And a lot of the things that are in that book, Robinson Crusoe, I think people could apply to some type of long-term event. But anyway, if you've never read Robinson Crusoe, I recommend everybody read it or listen to it on one of the audiobooks that are out there. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. Never heard a prepping channel talk about Robinson Crusoe when they talk about prepper fiction, and I wanted to touch base on it with you guys here today. But anyway, it's Modern Refugee. I appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys get a little information, a little entertainment, something to think about out of my videos as always, and you guys have a good one.